The red sands of Zeta Prime stretched endlessly under the unforgiving twin suns. It was a place of exile, where even the strongest struggled to survive. Captain Jack Harlan, a seasoned soldier of the Earth Coalition, was on a reconnaissance mission, his armored transport humming softly as it navigated the dunes. Suddenly, his scanner pinged, an anomaly just beyond the next ridge. Curious, Jack brought the transport to a halt and stepped out, the dry heat immediately enveloping him. He climbed the ridge and froze at the sight below. A woman and a child, their forms barely visible against the stark desert backdrop. The woman, regal even in her tattered state, lay slumped against a boulder, shielding a small girl in her arms. Her shimmering violet skin was cracked from dehydration, and her once elaborate robes were reduced to rags. The child, no older than 6, clung to her mother, her wide, frightened eyes scanning the horizon. Jack descended quickly, his medical kit in hand. The woman stirred weakly as he approached, her eyes locking onto him with a mix of defiance and desperation. "Who are you?" she rasped, her voice raw. "Captain Jack Harlan," he replied, kneeling beside her. "I'm here to help." "No one helps us," she said bitterly. "We were left to die." Jack's gaze softened as he began administering water and first aid. "Well, I'm not no one." As Jack worked to stabilize them, the woman introduced herself. "I am Queen Alara," she said, though her voice carried no pride, only sorrow. "My people turned on me after my husband's death. They feared I would use my daughter, Lyra, to claim the throne." Jack glanced at the child who clutched a small, tattered doll. "And so they abandoned you?" Alara nodded, her strength fading. "We were sent here to disappear." "Not anymore," Jack said firmly. "You're coming with me." Alara's eyes flickered with a mix of disbelief and gratitude. "Why would you risk yourself for us?" "Because it's the right thing to do," Jack replied, his tone resolute. "And because no one deserves to die alone in a place like this." Jack's transport rumbled across the desert, its reinforced hull shielding its passengers from the harsh elements. Alara and Lyra sat silently in the back, the child leaning against her mother while stealing glances at their rescuer. "Where are you taking us?" Alara finally asked, her voice stronger after drinking the water Jack had provided. "My outpost," Jack said over his shoulder. "It's not much, but it's safe." The outpost came into view an hour later, a small but well-fortified structure nestled against a rocky cliff. Jack helped Alara and Lyra inside, guiding them to a shaded corner where they could rest. He fetched more supplies, setting up a cot for Alara and a smaller one for Lyra. "This is kind of you," Alara said as Jack handed her a nutrient pack. "But surely your superiors wouldn't approve of harboring exiles." Jack shrugged. "My mission is to protect life. That includes you." While Alara rested, Lyra wandered cautiously, her small footsteps barely making a sound. She found Jack in the supply room, organizing medical kits. "Are you a warrior?" she asked, her voice tentative. Jack turned, surprised but amused by her boldness. "Something like that. I'm a soldier." "Soldiers hurt people," Lyra said, clutching her doll tightly. Jack knelt to her level, his expression serious. "Some do, but I'm here to help people, like you and your mom." Lyra studied him for a moment, then nodded. "You're different." "I hope so," Jack replied with a small smile. As night fell, Jack checked on Alara. She was awake, her gaze fixed on the horizon visible through the outpost's narrow window. "Thank you," she said softly as he entered. "You don't need to thank me," Jack replied, pulling up a chair. "You needed help. I was there." Alara's eyes met his, vulnerability mingling with resolve. "You've given us a chance we thought we'd never have, but I don't know how to repay you." "Survive," Jack said simply. "That's all the payment I need." In that quiet moment, Alara allowed herself to believe that perhaps their exile wasn't the end of their story. Perhaps it was the beginning of something new. The days at the outpost passed with a strange rhythm of quiet survival. Queen Alara and her daughter Lyra began to recover, their strength slowly returning under Jack's care. Though the desert remained unforgiving outside, the outpost offered a semblance of safety. Alara, accustomed to command and palace intrigue, found herself humbled by the simplicity of life at the outpost. Jack worked tirelessly, his actions guided by a quiet sense of duty rather than words. Whether repairing equipment or tending to their needs, his unwavering focus left Alara both intrigued and grateful. "You do all this alone?" she asked one evening as Jack sat repairing a malfunctioning power unit. Jack didn't look up. It's easier that way. No one to argue with, no one to lose. Alara studied him, her expression softening. But it's lonely, isn't it? Jack hesitated, then shrugged. It was. Not anymore. Alara felt a warmth in his words, something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Meanwhile, Lyra explored the outpost with cautious curiosity. The child, initially shy and withdrawn, began to open up as Jack included her in small tasks. He taught her how to use simple tools and showed her the basics of first aid. "Why do you help us?" Lyra asked one afternoon as they repaired a broken water filter. Jack paused, choosing his words carefully. "Because it's what people should do. When someone needs help, you give it." Lyra tilted her head, considering his answer. "You're like a hero from my stories." Jack chuckled softly. "I wouldn't go that far." One evening, as the stars blanketed the desert sky, Alara joined Jack outside the outpost. They sat in silence for a while, the vast expanse of the universe stretching endlessly above them. "Thank you," Alara said finally, her voice quiet but firm, "for giving us a chance." Jack glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "You don't have to thank me, but I want to," Alara insisted. "What you've done for us, no one else would have." Jack's gaze lingered on her, his defenses softening. "You've been through hell. You deserve a chance to start again." For the first time in years, Alara felt a flicker of hope. In Jack's quiet strength, she saw not just a savior, but someone who truly cared. The fragile peace of the outpost was shattered one morning when Jack received an alert from his perimeter sensors. A small ship had landed nearby, its markings indicating it belonged to Alara's enemies. The faction that had exiled her wasn't content to leave her in the desert. They wanted her gone for good. "They've found us," Jack said grimly, arming himself with his rifle. Alara's face paled, but her resolve hardened. "They won't stop until Lyra and I are dead." "Not on my watch," Jack replied, his tone firm. Jack worked quickly, setting traps around the outpost and securing its weak points. Alara, unwilling to remain idle, insisted on helping. Despite her recovery, her years as a queen and strategist hadn't dulled her mind. "You're not just a soldier," Alara observed as she helped him rig a makeshift defense. "You're a protector." Jack glanced at her, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "And you're not just a queen, you're a fighter." Alara's expression softened. "For Lyra, I'll be anything." As the sun dipped below the horizon, the attackers struck. A small but well-armed squad advanced on the outpost, their movements precise. Jack and Alara worked together seamlessly, her strategic insight complementing his combat skills. From her hiding spot, Lyra watched with wide eyes, her mother and Jack standing as a united front against their enemies. Despite her fear, she felt an overwhelming sense of safety in their presence. The battle was brutal but brief. Jack's traps and tactical expertise turned the tide, forcing the attackers to retreat. The outpost was damaged, but it held strong, a testament to their determination. As the dust settled, Jack found Alara sitting on a crate, exhaustion etched on her face. "You okay?" he asked, crouching beside her. She nodded, her voice steady despite her fatigue. "Thanks to you." Jack smiled faintly. "We did this together." In that moment, the bond between them deepened, forged not just in survival, but in trust. Together, they realized they were stronger than they could ever be alone. The aftermath of the attack left Jack, Alara, and Lyra shaken but resolute. The outpost's defenses had held, but the damage was a stark reminder of the relentless danger they faced. As the three of them worked to rebuild, Jack noticed a shift in Alara. She no longer moved with the hesitant grace of a fallen queen. Instead, she was decisive, her actions guided by a fierce determination to protect her daughter. "You're taking to this life pretty well," Jack said as he watched her secure a barrier they'd constructed from salvaged metal. Alara paused, wiping sweat from her brow. "A queen adapts to her surroundings. My daughter's safety is all that matters." Jack nodded, his respect for her growing. "She's lucky to have you. You're stronger than most soldiers I've served with." Alara smiled faintly, a flicker of pride softening her features. "And you're more than just a soldier, Jack. You've given us more than shelter, you've given us hope." Meanwhile, Lyra began to find her place within the small outpost. Though young, she was resourceful, eager to help wherever she could. She shadowed Jack as he worked, soaking up his knowledge with the curiosity of a child who had known nothing but survival. "How do you know so much?" Lyra asked one afternoon as Jack taught her how to repair a damaged sensor array. Experience, Jack replied, his tone light, and a lot of mistakes. Lyra tilted her head. Did anyone help you when you were little? Jack hesitated, his gaze distant for a moment. Not really. That's why I want to help you. Lyra smiled, her trust in him growing with each passing day. You're like a hero from my mama's stories. Jack chuckled softly. Let's hope I can live up to that. As the days passed, the sense of calm was replaced by an uneasy tension. Jack's scanners picked up faint signals, ships patrolling the edges of Zeta Prime's atmosphere. Alara's enemies weren't done with their hunt. They'll be back, Alara said one evening, her voice heavy with worry as she stood beside Jack at the outpost's perimeter. Jack adjusted his rifle, his expression resolute. Then we'll be ready. Alara glanced at him, her eyes searching his face. Why do you care so much about us? Jack met her gaze, his voice steady. Because you and Lyra deserve a chance. Because no one should be left to face this alone. Alara's heart stirred at his words, the sincerity in his tone disarming her. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen, not as a queen, but as a person. The next attack came at dawn. A larger force descended upon the outpost, their weapons tearing through the desert silence. Jack, Alara, and Lyra were prepared, but the odds were daunting. Jack took charge, his calm command rallying the defenders. Stick to the plan, he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. We've got this. Alara, armed with a blaster Jack had trained her to use, held her ground beside him. I never thought I'd fight like this again, she admitted between shots. You're doing great, Jack replied, his admiration evident. But stay close to me. Lyra, safely hidden in a reinforced bunker, watched the battle through a small viewport. Her fear was palpable, but she trusted Jack and her mother to protect her. As the attackers pressed closer, Jack realized they needed to take a risk. There's a weak point in their formation, he told Alara. If we can hit it, we might force them to retreat. Alara nodded, her resolve hardening. What do you need me to do? Jack hesitated, his protective instincts flaring. You've done enough, Alara. I'm not sitting this out, she said firmly. Tell me what to do. Together, they executed a daring maneuver, using the outpost's limited firepower to exploit the enemy's vulnerability. Alara's precision and Jack's strategic mind turned the tide, forcing the attackers to withdraw. As the last of the enemy ships fled, Jack and Alara surveyed the battlefield. The outpost was battered, but it still stood, a testament to their resilience. Jack found Lyra emerging from the bunker, her small face streaked with tears. He knelt beside her, his voice gentle. It's okay, we're safe now. Lyra threw her arms around him, her trust in him absolute. You're the bravest person I know. Jack smiled, his heart full. Your mama's pretty brave too, he said, glancing at Alara. Alara approached, her expression softening as she looked at Jack. You've done more for us than anyone ever has, she said quietly. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to, Jack replied. We're in this together now. In that moment, the bond between them solidified, a shared understanding that they were stronger as a team. As the sun set over the desert, they began to rebuild once more, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they had become a family. Not by blood, but by choice. The aftermath of the latest attack left the outpost scarred but standing. Jack, Alara, and Lyra worked tirelessly to repair the damage, knowing full well that their enemies would not give up so easily. Despite the danger, there was a new sense of unity between them, a bond forged in battle and trust. As the repairs progressed, Jack began to notice subtle changes in Alara. Her once regal demeanor had softened, replaced by a fierce yet grounded determination. She wasn't just a queen fighting for survival anymore. She was a mother protecting her child and a partner sharing in the burden. You've adapted well to all of this, Jack remarked one evening as they patched up a damaged wall together. Alara paused, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Adapting is all I've ever known, Jack. My life has been about survival, even before this exile. Jack's expression softened. You're more than just surviving, Alara. You're leading. Her gaze lingered on him, a flicker of something unspoken passing between them. And I couldn't have done it without you. Meanwhile, Lyra thrived in the safety of the outpost. She spent her days helping Jack with small tasks and learning about the galaxy beyond Zeta Prime. Her curiosity was boundless, and her laughter became a source of joy for Jack and Alara amidst the constant tension. One evening, as Jack taught her how to recalibrate a scanner, Lyra asked, "Will we ever leave this place?" Jack hesitated, glancing at Alara. "One day," he said, his tone gentle, "when it's safe." Lyra nodded solemnly. "I hope you'll come with us. You're part of our family now." The words caught Jack off guard, but they warmed his heart. "I wouldn't dream of leaving," he said with a smile. Their peace was shattered when Jack intercepted a transmission on his outpost's comm system. The signal was faint but clear. A larger enemy force was gathering, preparing for a decisive strike. Jack shared the news with Alara, his expression grim. "They're not just hunting you anymore. They want to wipe this place off the map." Alara's jaw tightened. "Then we make our stand here. I won't let them take Lyra, or you." Jack nodded, his resolve matching hers. "We'll give them a fight they'll never forget." With time running out, Jack and Alara rallied the outpost's small community of refugees and survivors. Though their numbers were few, their determination was unshakable. They fortified the outpost, turning every corner into a defensible position and every scrap of material into a weapon. Alara proved to be a natural leader, her commanding presence inspiring the others. She stood alongside Jack as they planned their defense, her strategic mind complementing his military expertise. "You're incredible," Jack said as they reviewed the final preparations. Alara glanced at him, her expression softening. "And you're relentless. Together, we might just survive this." On the eve of the battle, Jack found Alara sitting alone by the outpost's perimeter, the twin moons casting a silvery glow over the desert. He joined her, the silence between them heavy with unspoken thoughts. "I've never had anyone fight for me like this," Alara admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not since my husband." Jack's chest tightened. "I'm not him, Alara, but I'll fight for you. For both of you, as long as I have breath." Alara turned to him, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "And I'll fight beside you, because you've given us more than safety. You've given us a reason to hope again." Without hesitation, Jack reached for her hand, his touch steady and warm. In that moment, the bond between them deepened into something unbreakable. As dawn approached, Jack and Alara returned to the outpost, ready to face the battle together. Lyra, sensing the gravity of the situation, hugged them both tightly. "You'll come back, won't you?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jack knelt before her, his voice steady. "We will. I promise." Alara kissed her daughter's forehead, her own resolve firming. "You've made us stronger than we ever thought we could be, my love." As the first rays of sunlight pierced the horizon, the defenders of the outpost took their positions. United by a shared purpose and an unyielding determination, they prepared to face the storm that was about to descend upon them. Together, they were ready to defy the odds and protect the family they had become. The dawn air carried an ominous silence, broken only by the distant hum of approaching ships. The enemy force had arrived, larger and better equipped than any before. Jack, Alara, and the defenders of the outpost stood ready, their preparations complete, but their odds daunting. "They're here," Jack said, scanning the horizon through binoculars. The fleet of armored vehicles and troops stretched as far as the eye could see. He turned to Alara. "Stay with the main group. If this goes sideways—" "No," Alara interrupted, her tone resolute. "We face this together." Jack nodded, admiration flickering in his eyes. "Then let's show them what we're made of." The attack began with a barrage of energy blasts, shaking the outpost's reinforced walls. Jack directed the defenders with precision, their traps and fortifications holding back the initial wave. Alara fought alongside him, her blaster shots deadly accurate. Amidst the chaos, Lyra remained in a secure bunker, her wide eyes glued to the small monitor showing the battlefield. Though afraid, she whispered to herself, "They'll win. They always do." The defenders fought fiercely, but the enemy's sheer numbers began to take their toll. Jack and Alara moved between positions, rallying their outnumbered forces and improvising as the battle intensified. As the second wave pushed closer, Jack realized they needed a decisive move. "We can't hold them off like this forever," he told Alara, his voice grim. "There's an old fuel cache buried beneath the east side. If we detonate it, we can take out a chunk of their forces." Alara's eyes widened. "That will leave us exposed." "I know," Jack admitted, "but it's the only chance we have." I'll do it, Alara said without hesitation. No, Jack said firmly. I'll go. You're more important here. Jack, Alara said, gripping his arm. We're in this together, always. After a tense moment, Jack relented. Fine, we do it together. Under cover of darkness, Jack and Alara slipped to the east side of the outpost. The enemy forces were thick, their movements methodical as they prepared for the final assault. Jack worked quickly, setting charges on the buried fuel tanks, while Alara covered him, her blaster fire keeping the enemy at bay. Almost there, Jack muttered, his hands steady despite the pressure. Make it quick, Alara called out, taking down another enemy soldier. As the charges were armed, the enemy realized their plan and converged on their position. Jack and Alara fought side by side, their teamwork seamless as they held the line. Now, Jack shouted, detonating the charges. The explosion rocked the battlefield, a massive fireball engulfing the enemy's eastern flank. The shockwave knocked Jack and Alara off their feet, but their mission was a success. The enemy forces, demoralized and disorganized, began to retreat. The defenders regrouped, their cheers echoing across the desert as the enemy fled. Jack and Alara, battered but alive, returned to the outpost. Lyra ran to meet them, tears streaming down her face as she hugged them both tightly. You did it, she cried. You saved us. Jack knelt to her level, his exhaustion melting away as he held her close. We saved each other. In the days that followed, the outpost became a beacon of hope. Refugees and allies from across the desert joined them, inspired by their victory and the unity they represented. Alara stepped into a leadership role, her experience as a queen invaluable in organizing their growing community. One evening, as the desert winds whispered through the outpost, Jack and Alara stood on the rooftop, watching the stars. You've given us more than safety, Alara said, her voice soft. You've given us a home. Jack turned to her, his expression tender. And you've given me something I didn't think I'd find again, a reason to fight. Their hands intertwined, a silent promise passing between them. Together, they had faced the storm and emerged stronger, their bond unbreakable and their future bright. As the stars shone above, the outpost stood as a testament to resilience, love, and the enduring power of hope. Jack, Alara, and Lyra were no longer just survivors. They were a family, ready to face whatever the galaxy had in store.